Warren Evans, Wayne County Executive, joining us here on the show. Warren, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Craig. It's great to be here.
Well, and I'll tell you what, I was a reporter for a long time. And for a long time, all the headlines I saw about Wayne County were for the wrong reasons, whether it was a deal gone bad on a piece of property, whether it was about pension obligations, whether it was about maybe questionable pensions that were given to certain employees and potential corruption. You were elected 4 years ago, just reelected, by the way. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Those things have died down. We're not hearing the same types of stories. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a bit about what that first year in office was like when you took a look at the ground here at Wayne County, took a look at the situation, and decided what you had to tackle. What was that? How daunting was it at that moment?
Well, it's interesting, I guess. In many ways, I've been around the county long enough to have a pretty good feeling
Sure.
For the depths of despair, so to speak. Didn't really know how deep the hole was, but was committed to making sure that if we're going to do anything positive, we've got to get out and really find out concisely how deep the hole is. And, quite frankly, I used Bob Dado from Brooks Patterson's staff to help me get there. And then the second part was to sell the citizenry on how bad it was. I mean, there are always going to be fights about how you get out of it, but you got to figure out what it is you're trying to do, and you got to get people wrapped around trying to do that. I think we did a very, very good job of doing that. I'm always asked, was the hole so deep that it startled you? No, not really. I mean, I always expect the worst and then feel a little better if it's not that bad.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, though, I wonder, everybody who works in a governmental situation always has an idea of how they could do things differently. Oh, here's some things we could do to make things better. Were you surprised at how many of the ideas you maybe already had were viable, or how many of them, maybe weren't as viable as you might have thought before you took the job?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think devising the plan to get out of it was as critical as getting everybody on board, understanding that we can't all have what we want to have if we're going to get out of this hole.
Yeah.
And that
It's a fun
was
conversation.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
and it was a tough one. But I mean, if you've been around the county as long as I had, people have formed opinions about when I'll blink and when I won't. And so in negotiating with unions and others, I think I had kind of an advantage that people knew what to expect and that I was going to be reasonable where I could, but the county can't go belly up for any one particular group or one particular problem. So, and then after that, it's all team. I mean, we put together a recovery plan that I'm still marvel at. I mean, we're still following it.
Sure.
We're not completely out of the water now, but we followed it and hit just about every nail on the head, which is great.
Which you needed to do, though. Because without it, frankly, Wayne County was really struggling. Perception-wise was a big problem. Financially, there was a huge hit. There were a lot of people questioning whether or not bankruptcy was on the horizon for the county and openly speculating about that at the time. So any candidate running for office is going to sit there and say, here's the things I would love to do. But those first couple of years, you didn't have any choice but to actually hunker down and figure this out.
No, that's true.
And that's no fun. Tell me what that was like for you, just to sit there and just be consumed by figuring out how to get out of this hole to give you at least something you can build off going forward.
I thought that would be, extremely boring work because you really want to get into the providing of services and stuff. But oddly enough, that actually was an exciting part of the time because we had little markers all the way with the recovery plan that we were hitting, and when we were able to get the county commission and other elected officials to kind of sit back and relax and allow us to do the things that needed to be done, we started working. Specifically, the plan is just, we're going to have to cut. And where can we cut in a way that's not devastating all of our employees? And by the way, people were still reeling from Detroit's bankruptcy. And as you said, everybody assumed we were going into bankruptcy. So every opportunity to make an incremental move forward away from it, I think people got a little more assured that we were trying to work in the right direction and follow this.
Well, obviously, you need to have those successes along the way to get buy-in from not just the commission. The commission you need to work closely with on these things, but also the leadership of the individual communities that make up the county, because they all have their own needs. At what point did you sense that people were starting to buy into what the plan was for the county and they were starting to see some potential benefits from it?
I think in two areas. One was the fact that I did then and still now take the opinion that Wayne County is 43 separate distinct communities, and the beauty of it is that there are 43 distinct communities.
Yeah.
And the county should be a facilitator to help get goods and services where they need to be, help in economic development, a bunch of other things, but don't try to be the boss, try to be a coordinating activity that can help things get there. And the second part of it is us throwing away the old edge economic development idea and saying, I don't need to go to China to try to bring in new businesses. What I got to do is help to bolster the ones that are here, help give them whatever lifelines we can provide.
Well, I want to talk a bit about that because that was a change in attitude. I mean, so much of business attraction has been, where can we go and get somebody to relocate to our community? Did you get a sense from the people that you talked to that they felt that they were neglected in their needs, the people that were already here?
Absolutely. And I don't mean neglected in a way that they were hostile about it, but I mean, they were very, very receptive to little things like, if we're going to do road repairs, maybe we can enhance lighting. If we can help the conditions around your business, we've helped your business. It's not always a business loan. It's not always a brownfield grant. It's not always those sorts of things. I mean, are we attuned to what you're trying to do? And are we trying to coordinate our service provisions? So if you make the quality of life around their business better, you've made the business better. And I think most people understand that.
It seems that a lot of economic development, though, is centered around that sort of shiny object, right? What's that big thing? And we, of course, have been talking about Amazon a lot in the last few days, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. But getting citizens and businesses to understand, frankly, that, hey, look, we're just going to shore up the basic things that we need to do. We're going to do those things better. We may not be going after giant new companies, huge new projects right now. That will come at some point. What did you need to do so that you could actually start putting yourselves in a situation where you can confidently go after some of the big fish that might be out there?
No, we're getting there now.
Yeah.
And later we could talk about some of those.
Sure, we will.
Yeah, but I mean, the main
Logistic businesses in particular.
businesses understand if the county's not solvent, what are you going to do to help? Not only can you probably not really help us, but you're hurting us because the vision of the consumers, the vision of other businesses is that this is not a very hospitable place, or at least a very well-run place with the kind of lifestyle opportunities that people want. So as we kind of brought the C up a little bit in terms of our credit rating.
The credit rating is a huge deal. To get that, the bond rating is something that, when I worked for Mayor Duggan's office, it was basically anytime there was a bond increase, it was basically like champagne corks being popped.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it saves you so much money on everything else that you're doing on your borrowing that you can focus resources on other things.
That's the internal part about it.
Yeah, exactly.
But the external part about it is you have incremental improvements all the time, which are part of those markers I was saying early, that we get a chance to kind of see we're going in the right direction. And I think businesses did. I mean, we went from junk bond status to investment grade, and we're still not where we could ultimately be, but it's a good measure that the county is moving in the right direction.
Well, and what did that do in terms of people leaving the county? Because for a long time, Wayne County's been bleeding businesses and residents. I mean, that's just a fact of life. Where are we right now when it comes to business retention? Because as you said, that became your primary focus. Retain the ones we've got, strengthen them, and then we'll see if we can build off of it. Where are we when it comes to retention?
Well, we're really bringing in new business now. So, I mean, the retention part worked. I mean, it doesn't take much for a small business to want to stay there either.
Yeah.
But, up and move is really more traumatic than staying there. Nobody really wanted to go. It's just you get neglected long enough, you feel like you need to go. And so once that kind of stabilized and once the economy improved some, Detroit's been a huge part of this, just the overall feeling, whether it's outside of Detroit or not. I mean, that's the hub, that's the nucleus. All of the new things happening here have also helped us out county.
I want to ask you about that because, for a long time in this region, Oakland County had been the economic driver. It had been going that way for a long time. Wayne County's always had a huge presence, obviously, but Oakland County was seen as the growth county. And I'm not trying to pit Oakland versus Wayne or anything like that, but it certainly seems as if that tide has turned a little bit. There's a ton of attention focused in Detroit. You've got a ton of attention focused out towards Willow Run and the airport with Aerotropolis and everything else that's out there. The mobility center that's emerging right at the border with Washtenaw. It certainly seems as if Wayne County is taking more of a leadership role in the economic drivers of the region as opposed to the political drivers of the region. The way it should be?
We are, yeah. I think so. I mean, I think if you know anything about history, and certainly you do, I mean, things are cyclical. This is not the time for Oakland County to be pouting about whatever. I don't remember.
Are
There's
they
some pouting going on.
Yeah.
We didn't pout for the last 30 years. We suffered through it. We start to work, the big we,
Sure.
the movement. So Detroit's doing well. Just figure out what people want now, whether it's in the area of recreation or where they want to live. They want to be in the middle of things that are going on. Well, where are you going to find in Michigan more going on than this growth spurt in the city of Detroit? And so, we have some objectives we need to get to help that growth. But I think it's just naturally the cyclical changes that occur. There was a change when everybody wanted to go to the suburbs and have whatever the suburbs offered for them. Well, there are an awful lot of people coming here now. And when you look at the growth shrinkage, I mean, I can clearly say that the growth shrinkage is the lowest that it's been. And really, if you really study utility turn-ons and stuff like that, I'm not so sure that we aren't really starting to go in the positive direction. The data just hasn't caught up with what I think the trend is.
Well, I think there's been some misperceptions, though, about Wayne County over the years, too, in terms of when it comes to economic development, in that many people think of this as an older place. There's not developable property, which is not true. I mean, there's a ton of it, especially out in the western part of the county and some of the southern parts of the county. There is space to do this. But, with Detroit, for a long time being seen as an albatross around the county's neck as opposed to an asset, are you surprised at how quickly that attitude has sort of changed? Not just here. I mean, we've got a lot of things we still need to fix in the city of Detroit, let's be honest. But the perception outside the city, outside of the region about what's happening here has completely changed. Has that been a more dramatic turnaround than you expected?
The turnaround is the attitude change? No, not necessarily.
Really?
I mean, there's still older people in the suburbs who accept the change but are not coming down here because they still have a mind that, I remember the past and, oh my God, there was some terrible experience. And then there are younger people who don't believe that at all and can't wait to get down here. But I think a nice part of the Detroit growth is what happens with Aerotropolis in the airport. When you got 6,000 developable acres out there and you've got a world-class airport. I don't care what you argue about. If you fly in and out of airports, you got to know this is a world-class airport. And so that connectivity to that and Ann Arbor and Western Wayne County's connectivity to Ann Arbor and the airport, there's a lot of Wayne County growth that can come.
Well, Aerotropolis is an idea that came out with your predecessor in the office, Bob Ficano, started talking about this, planning for it a long time. It's really gone into motion in the last few years, and we're starting to see a real uptick in logistical businesses that are operating. Of course, Amazon operating in the region was a big win for Oakland, or for Wayne County, excuse me. And that's the kind of thing that has a ripple effect, right? So other people see a decision that a company like Amazon makes. How do you capitalize on that and keep this momentum going? And what do you think it is about that concept that people are starting to recognize works for their business?
90% of it is the team you put in place. I mean, where do you value? Do you value the name Aerotropolis, or do you value working with those communities to make something happen? There are really only two types of people in the world: those who want to do something and those who want to be somebody. If you want to do something, then you'll get in there, get the leadership that you need. Rob Luce has done a great job at Aerotropolis, Khalil Rahal from my shop. But we worked with the airport. We worked with others to have a symbiotic kind of relationship about what we go after, what we don't go after, what makes sense. So, yeah, I mean, I think the future is extremely bright. Now, we're going to hit an economic downturn.
Sure.
But in my humble opinion, the investment is so significant at this point, then the word is to ride out the downturn. Don't, cash in your chips and go home. We've passed that point, I believe.
So, okay, that's an interesting point that you're making. So that the next downturn, remember the saying used to be, when America gets a cold, Detroit gets the flu. Metro Detroit gets the flu. The automotive industry gets the flu. You think that with some of the moves that we've made and the types of businesses we're attracting to the region, that we're going to be able to ride this out much like a number of other communities in the country would, as opposed to getting hit with that old Rust Belt flu?
I absolutely believe that's true. And I believe it's true like it was true 50, 60, 70 years ago when the auto industry was in great shape. Even if we went to war, we used the industry to tool up for something else. We didn't throw away Detroit at that point. I just think the investment, the energy, we got some obstacles. I mean, the talent pool, the ability to deal with poverty, chronic poverty in a different sort of way. I mean, there are always challenges, but to me, that's the fun of it. 4 years ago, the challenge was to keep Wayne County out of bankruptcy. I've enjoyed every day of working, to where we are. So I'm not intimidated by the problems going forward. They are there. But yes, I do believe we've passed the investment point where people, take their money and go home.
Well, before we get to sort of this whole business of incentivizing businesses and building new businesses in Wayne County, increasing that, I do want to give you an opportunity real quick to talk about what the next step would be, in terms of, like I said, you stabilize the budget here in Wayne County, you improve the bond rating, the credit rating of the county, which allows you to invest more in some services
Save
that are
money on a debt service.
Saving money, saving a lot of money. It's a big deal. So going into the second term, what do you think is sort of the message you want to give to people in the county right now as to what you're going to be able to tackle next?
Well, the biggest one that people are interested in is roads, and we certainly are going to up the tempo with every increased dollar we've gotten for roads. But I want people to be real clear. It's like throwing a nickel in an empty galvanized bucket. There's not enough money appropriated for us to get our roads in the shape that we'd want them to be. That doesn't mean we won't manage well. That doesn't mean we won't do everything we can, but that's something the new governor and others are going to have to really deal with. That's part of it. Another thing that's very, very important to me is our park systems and connecting parks. Whether it's a local city park, whether it's a Detroit park, whether it's a county park, or here in Metro Park, I don't really care. The connectivity between them and the ability to pull your county together and then have some business spaces around it where there are businesses that can support park activities, can connect parks to the downtowns. It's a way to make those 43 distinct communities much more connected, but still have their distinct characters that they like.
All right, my guest right now, of course, is Wayne County Executive Warren Evans. We're going to take a short break. We'll continue this conversation when we come back here on Business Casual. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Pop That Culture.
Bury the phone in the pet cemetery. It's got a cord.
Welcome back to the Craig Fahle Show. Our votes don't matter. I always disagree.
Doing this show, I feel like I get a little bit of time to chit chat with the man
Yeah.
that I fell in love with.
Oh.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the Greg Russell Movie Show. Writer, producer, director. How did this whole thing come about for you?
As a business owner, you're always looking to save money and cut costs where you can. And if you advertise on radio or television, you know it can get pretty pricey. If radio and TV aren't delivering like they promised, and you're looking for a more reasonably priced way to get your message to the masses, I've got an answer for you. New Radio Media. With live streaming and on-demand programming, your message can be seen throughout the day, and you can worry a little less about cutting those costs. For more information, go to newradiomedia.com or call Buzz Van Houten at 248-939-9999.
I'll tell you what happened.
We're at C2E2 with the legendary Chris Claremont.
Greetings, my fellow geeks. My name is Jordan Trevelyan, and this is Get It to the Geeks. We're here with David Yost, the original blue Power Ranger.
Nobody promised you when you bought the thing on PS4 that you could play it on Switch.
But your excuse is garbage.
I'm gonna pull out my crossbow.
All right, sweet chainmail armor. Let's see what you got.
I'm Jackie Callan, Dr. Mark Berkowitz.
We all accumulate so many products.
They probably dried out if I opened the jars.
You can't miss the team member with Medicare.
You're a critical part of the team.
Yeah.
But I would eat the yolks. That's not really helping them diet, is it?
They're not getting anything out of it. It goes right through them.
With these relatively small steps, it becomes a lot easier over time to make major lifestyle changes.
Put your arms out if you want to.
Whoa! Nice!
Welcome back to Business Casual, a partnership between the Detroit Regional Chamber and New Radio Media. I'm Craig Fahle, your host. My guest, of course, Wayne County Executive Warren Evans, former Detroit Police Chief, former Wayne County Sheriff, of course, now County Executive, about to enter his second term in office. Congratulations on your victory, sir. It was never really in doubt, obviously, but at the same time, you never take that stuff for granted, I'm sure, right?
You can't.
You can't.
Either run scared or don't run.
But I have to ask you, you're going, this is going to be quite a different administration coming in Lansing than we've seen with Rick Snyder. And Rick Snyder, let's be honest, he had a pretty good relationship with the mayor of the city of Detroit, with yourself, was very invested in making sure that Southeast Michigan as a whole was the cog it needed to be for economic growth in the region. I mean, he paid a lot of attention, and despite whatever criticisms he may get, he was committed to this region.
Was helpful, absolutely.
And very helpful. You've got a new administration that's coming in. Do you anticipate that relationship is going to be similar? Just because you're of the same political persuasion doesn't necessarily mean that relationship's easy.
No, and if she does her job and I do mine, we'll bump heads every now and then on something. But I think philosophically, yes, I've spent an awful lot of time with the governor-elect, understand what I think she's going to work on and be interested in. And I've certainly given her a tremendous amount of my feedback for whatever it's worth in terms of what I think is important. I think she sees, has a similar vision to the governor's in terms of the development, the importance of Southeastern Michigan. I think she has a better handle on some of those more substantive community issues of poverty and education in a little different way than the previous governor did. Frankly, I think it'll be more positive, but Governor Snyder has been very, very helpful.
I brought it up because you mentioned the roads, and she of course ran on this whole thing of fixing the damn roads, and Wayne County's got share road problems like everybody else. Right. You haven't whined about it as much as Mark Hackle has, and I don't mean any disrespect, Mark. I don't. But that is something that disrupted the transit argument. The road
shouldn't
funding,
have, but did.
It did. But that's the whole point. And is this the kind of thing where the road discussion that we're going to have, because she did make that huge promise, is that potentially going to impact any real discussion we have on greater transit needs going forward?
I would hope that it won't. I don't think it's a solid argument in the first place. I mean, in fact, I think very simply, the more you do in terms of transit, the less wear and tear you're putting on your road infrastructure. Let's just deal with it. I mean, I've never seen so many 26-year-old males in my life as I see now who don't have a driver's license. That's not in their wheelhouse. That's not what they want. Transit from one place to the other. And quite frankly, if there was a vote today in Oakland County would vote for transit. Wayne would vote for transit. Detroit would vote for transit. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in Macomb, and I don't try to speak for them, but Brooks's maneuver to keep it off the ballot, in my humble opinion, was about keeping the voters from saying, this is what we want. He wasn't speaking for them.
Was there anything beyond that? I mean, do you think part of this was also just an attempt to make sure that we didn't have even more people coming to the polls than we were already expecting with the proposals we had this year? I mean, because look, this is a turnout question, and there was every effort made to keep voters, not politicians, off the ballot, legalized recreational marijuana off the ballot. There were a lot of people that wanted those things not there because they thought it was going to drive Democratic turnout.
Well, I mean,
That's just my conspiracy theory here.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't think it would have been that devious. I think it was still not wrapping head exactly around whether we want to be a region or we just want to talk about being a region. I mean, there's a price to be paid for being a region. There's tremendous economic development and other value if you're a region. But if you're a part of the region on certain issues, you lose your regional identity, then you can't have it both ways. Either you're going to get in and you're not. And maybe Macomb, for example, doesn't feel the need for it. I certainly don't want people who aren't going to use it to have to pay for it.
But, you know, I mean, Amazon made it pretty clear when they rejected our bid, even though they probably were going to reject every bid that wasn't New York or whatever, you know, DC.
Taught us a lot.
It did teach us a lot. You know, there was a whole lot of different things that went on with that. Tell me a little bit about your experience with that whole thing and what we did learn.
Well, I mean, the main experience was I saw a bunch of people come together to work collectively as a region to put input in a plan. And I've got a lot of experience doing that in my mind because that's kind of what you do in law enforcement in terms of if we have a big problem, these local communities have to work together, talk together, and save lives together.
Sure.
And so that was a big plus for us. We couldn't be quite so standalone and aloof. I don't think it hurt us really in any way. I mean, we might have gotten sandbagged, but it was the sandbagging that we learned from and got. So I mean,
I definitely think we were sandbagged. I think 230 communities were sandbagged on this one. But what does that teach us though about chasing companies with incentives?
Well, they told us
do we have to?
First, they told us major things we needed to do.
Yeah.
Your talent pool issues are here, and they need to be better. Your transit issues are here. And what gets the talent pool from somewhere else here but transit? So it taught us a lot of things that I think we needed to know. And I think a lot of people have learned from it in a positive way for transit in the next year or two.
Are you worried that the balance of power when it comes to these types of negotiations, though, with companies has shifted to the corporate world in that they basically can say, hey, nice offer, we love your community, but they're giving us that much more in tax breaks, we'll see you later. Is this just the way the game is going to be played from now on, or is there a way to reel it in a little bit?
I'm not sure. I think there's a way to reel it in. And one of the ways, and if you talk to a number of corporate people, they'll tell you, the tax breaks are big, but if you can up the services to the company and you can up the quality of life conditions so that people want to live there, that also is money in the bank for companies. So I don't really think the abatement process is necessarily the greatest. At the county level, it's terrible. I mean, my economic development people are coming in trying to soothe my nerves a little bit because as we give the abatement, we live on property taxes.
Yes.
And abating property taxes just tells me I've got to provide more service and I'm not going to get paid for it. But I also see the bigger picture, which is 50, we need to increase. But you know, they'll just the standing joke in the office. Who's going to tell him about the next abatement? But I mean, I haven't.
Well, I'll ask them that when the panel happens in a couple of minutes.
I haven't been fighting them because I see the end game. But yes, if your question is, in my mind, are we overly indulgent, overly trapped by abatement concessions? I think we are. But you know, I'm not fighting it yet. I mean, we're going to do what we can, and I think the improvements in the city and the growth and the investment ought to have some impact on a lessening of the need for abatements. I mean, we're not in the same shape we were 8 years ago. Sure. The abatements don't need to be the same in 2020 or 2019 as they were in, you know,
well, one last question. We've only got a couple of minutes left, and I want to ask you about this because this is something I've sort of been watching emerge over the last couple of years in particular, as we had the debate on transit, as we've been having the debate on regionalism and cooperation. You've sort of emerged as somebody that is taking a lead role in making that conversation happen and trying to negotiate with Brooks Patterson, with Mark Hackle, with Mayor Duggan, obviously. Is that a role that you're comfortable with? Do you like taking that on? And does somebody need to sort of step up and be the adult in the room, so to speak?
Well, somebody needs to take the lead on it. I don't know if it's fun to to get into tiffs with your colleagues. But we've all known each other a long time. Anybody that takes it personally is, it's an issue of importance. One of the things I'm not scared of is to take a short-term loss for a long-term gain. And the political imperative usually is you don't want to take any political loss. I guess you could sit around and say, I lost on transit, but I don't think I really lost. And I know the region didn't lose because we pushed forward.
I think a lot of fault lines were exposed there, and we actually know where people stand.
I think we're better off as a
mayors
result.
are coming out in Oakland County on your side. Opt-out mayors are coming out. I think. Do you think we learned a little bit about that consensus?
I think we did.
It's stronger than we thought?
I think we did, and I think, it's somebody's job to push that agenda. If I wind up being the one, fine. I don't necessarily volunteer for the job, but I'm not going to leave it in the lurch either. So I think I think it's actually been positive, even though transit so far has not been the win. And we're talking to Washtenaw County, we're talking to Oakland, we're talking to others. I mean, if there's a part of the region that doesn't want in, then let's not pipe dream about something that's not going to be. Let's try to work within what we have. Obviously, the finances of it are going to change, so we're looking at it.
I look forward to seeing what comes out of it. These are important discussions for the region. And Warren Evans, of course, Wayne County Executive, thank you very much for being with us on this edition of Business Casual. We've got a panel discussion coming up. Some of the folks that you work with, we're going to have Khalil Rahal, of course, the Assistant Wayne County Executive. Rob Luce is going to be joining us from Aerotropolis. And, of course, Justin Robinson from the Detroit Regional Chamber, who's the Vice President of Business Attraction, to follow up on some of the things that you said and go a little deeper into the weeds on some of these policies. But, sir, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
I'll be listening. Thank you.
This is Business Casual. We'll be right back.
The Detroit region is flipping the narrative of economic progress. Nearly a decade after the Great Recession, the numbers tell a positive story for Southeast Michigan. On December 4th, Detroit Regional Chamber CEO Sandy Barua will provide an economic overview of the 11-county Detroit region at the unveiling of the 5th annual State of the Region report, which provides a comprehensive benchmarking of our region's economic health. Attendees will learn where the region stands in critical economic indicators, including per capita income growth, unemployment, median home values, talent, innovation, foreign direct investment, and more, to help make data-driven decisions for business growth. Ensuring the region is educated, employed, and healthy to compete in a 21st century economy starts with knowing where the region stands against our peers. Join the Chamber for the State of the Region Luncheon on December 4th at Ford Field. Learn more and register today at DetroitChamber.com/SOR. Again, that's DetroitChamber.com/SOR.
Welcome back to Business Casual. I'm Craig Fahle. Thanks very much for being with me today. Now, we just heard a conversation that I had with Wayne County Executive Warren Evans. Now we're going to break it down with this week's panel discussion. And I've got some great folks joining me here today to talk about it. Justin Robinson is here, of course, Vice President of Business Attraction for the Detroit Regional Chamber, our partner organization. Justin, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Great to be here.
We also have Rob Luce, Executive Director of the Detroit Region Aerotropolis. Thank you for being here. It's been a little while since we spoke. It's great to have you here. Khalil, not so long. Khalil Rahal, Assistant Wayne County Executive, is here with me once again. Always a pleasure to have you here.
Always good to be with you.
All right, Khalil, and thanks for being here. So I'm not going to let you talk about what your boss had to say just a couple of minutes ago. I want to actually go over to Justin at the Chamber first about this. When you take a look at the climate here, you're, of course, Vice President of Business Attraction. Where is Wayne County now in terms of being an attractive place to locate a business compared to where it was 4 years ago?
I think in a much better place. I mean, I think one of the key things businesses look for is stability, right? And they want certainty. And Wayne County delivers that now. And they've really done a great job of cultivating key assets, as we talked about the airport, 275 corridor, obviously the revitalization of the city of Detroit. There's a lot of great stories to tell now, and it's resonating with the global business community.
Obviously, Rob, that's what you're going for as you're looking at trying to get people to locate in your region, understand the value of your location, and frankly what you offer when it comes to logistical opportunities and so many other things. What's it been like? Because you and I have talked about this before on a few occasions. How much different is it now than it was?
It's exceptionally better than what it was. The past 2 years have been fantastic. I've done almost $500 million in development, nearly 3,000 jobs. The pipeline is full of some pretty big projects that will come online in 2019. So a lot of inquiries, a lot of interest in the region. The phone rings every day with companies looking to expand.
And Khalil, I mean, what do you think is responsible for that renewed interest? I mean, obviously the stability is there, but there's a lot of different places people can locate. I mean, are there still there's basically strategic advantages to being in Wayne County as opposed to even other parts of the region?
That's right. And I think talking about those strategic advantages, educating folks about them and showing them how they connect together is a big piece of that. When the county executive came in, in addition to the jail problem, in addition to the financial problem, we really did have one of the worst reputations when it came to economic development. And it made it very difficult to communicate with your partners. Nobody can do the job that you just described alone. We need our partners in Aerotropolis. We need the chamber. We need all of our friends at the 43 communities. We need folks at the state level. We need folks at the federal level. And so the very first thing we did, 7 months in, we eliminated EDGE and we replaced it with a very community-based, back to the basics approach to how we want to develop our economy. And his approach, the county executive, the way he approaches these communities, brings a level of trust that facilitates a lot more communication. And honest to goodness, that clear message alone can help shape what makes something attractive.
Talk about the cooperation part of this there, because one would assume that there's always sort of these back channel communications going on, people trying to help each other with different projects. Was it maybe more competitive than that before? Was there not a willingness to necessarily work together on certain things?
I don't really think at the practitioner level that was the case. I think people were working together very well. I do think overall the business case for this region is stronger than it's ever been. And when you look at it, it's about talent, right? It's about the customers that are here. And one of the great things about Wayne County is the diversity it possesses, right? Both in terms of the type of assets as well as the demographics of the population. The infrastructure that exists in the community. I mean, land is fundamentally important to the growth of companies. And the reality is, especially in the Tri-County area, we're extremely constrained. And Wayne County is one of the really few locations that offers really large-scale sites for big job creation. And when you tie that to the gateway of DTW connecting to the world, it's really phenomenal. And everybody understands these assets now and is promoting those across the spectrum.
Oh, go ahead, please, Rob.
I was just going to say, you might be surprised. It's not as cutthroat as it might seem. All of our business attraction efforts, and when I say our, I mean region-wide, are done in a collaborative approach. I don't know that I've ever gone on a business attraction trip, whether it be a trade mission or a conference or some other type of travel by myself. It's always with Wayne County or Macomb County or Oakland County, others from the state. It's a collaborative approach, and once that company decides to take a little bit harder look at a specific region within the state, that's when it becomes a little bit more siloed. But on the front end, when we're doing the pure business attraction, marketing and advertising, it's done collaboratively.
You mentioned, of course, land, right? When Metro Airport was first proposed, this is probably before I was born, I believe, but it was put out way out there in Romulus, right? And people were cursing the county and the people that did this forever because it was so far away. It looks like a stroke of genius now in terms of the amount of available property that's out there, the proximity to Willow Run as well, and some of the other assets in the region. Makes a lot of sense. Do you think that people were actually thinking that far ahead when they actually planned this out, or is this just something that's worked to your advantage, especially as you try to build, that logistical corridor out there?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say. I do.
I just a little speculation on our part here. So.
I know. I think the strategic location of the airport, being sort of halfway between Ann Arbor and Detroit, being able to pull from two talent pools, and then when you look at the airport itself, last year we had almost 34 million people come in through the airport. I mean, that's a lot of people. And you wouldn't believe this, but we could probably double the capacity with the amount of runways we have there. That provides for a lot of opportunities still to come. And around the airport, there are 6,000 developable acres in Aerotropolis. You don't find real estate around airports readily available for the kind of price with that talent pool. And then, going back to what Justin was saying earlier, the amount of assets that are around there, 5 rail lines, 3 highways, 2 airports.
Keep going.
the American Center for Mobility.
That's right. That's, well, we're
There's
going to talk about that in a
There's a
minute.
lot of reason to invest.
Yeah, I mean, when you put all those things together, you get the kind of results that we've been seeing now in Aerotropolis, almost $500 million of investment in the last couple of years and things like that. And I think only more good's going to come of it.
Well, I mean, you know, for every company like an Amazon that comes in and locates out there, or, you know, Flexingate that comes and redevelops some property in the city of Detroit and promises a lot of jobs and is delivering on that at this point in time, there's a lot of companies that nobody's ever heard of that are also opening up shops, maybe a small automotive supplier or something else. Some company you don't know what they do.
Right.
You just go over there, oh, that's nice, somebody works there. Is it difficult to identify potential targets for these types of development? Because we don't know necessarily who's looking, who wants to relocate, who wants to expand. How do you sort of put out those feelers to let people know that you're receptive to them coming in and asking you about it?
That's the secret sauce. Lead
So are you saying you
generation
can't tell me, or are you saying that's
you know, it's a great point. It's hard to find the companies that are expanding. And it oftentimes doesn't happen overnight. You know, these relationships are built over many, many years. And as they become more familiar with who you are in the region that you're representing, when they get to a point where they're looking to expand, they think, let me call that guy at the Aerotropolis. He's been talking about, you know, the opportunity that they have there for the past several years.
And I think it goes to the comment made earlier. It's a network, right? And it's all the communities and a lot of partnerships at the International Chambers of Commerce, our law firms, our accounting firms, our banks, the communities, right? We're all ambassadors for our region. Mm-hmm. And so we really have a pretty broad network of people out there now singing the praises of what's happening here in the business case for it. And so reactively, we have a lot of things just coming to us because of that network. Proactively though, right, we understand what our strengths are and what the best value propositions we have are for different industry segments. And we're very skilled at delivering those to companies. And I mean, in a given year, I think we're out at 50 different trade shows and trade missions around the world selling that, right? So you have to be out there aggressively talking to a lot of people. Obviously, the more target you can get with business intelligence on the front end, the better. But really, the key is volume, right? We want to hit as many Fortune 1000 companies and small to medium enterprises as possible each year with that message.
Justin, I want to ask you one last question, one quick question, because we have to take a break and then we're going to come back and talk, because not everything's rosy. We still have some stuff to talk about here. Sure. But I do want to talk about where we are when it comes to, again, you're with the Detroit Regional Chamber, convincing people that, hey, a site win for Wayne County or a site win for Oakland County isn't a loss for the other.
Yeah.
You know, where are we getting each other to understand that, you know, look, it's good for everybody if we get this done.
Yeah, I think at the practitioner level, there's no challenge there, right? People understand at the local, county, regional level of doing this work every day that a win for one is a win for all. I think what's changing now, right, and Amazon was a big part of this, is the role of the way the CEO community is thinking about this, our political leaders are thinking about this. And so the idea that, again, a win for one is a positive for everybody is something that I don't think was in the lexicon of a lot of people previous to Amazon. And I think they realize now we compete globally against other regions, right? We have 300 municipalities in the region as we define it. Really, you can't have all 300 out there telling different messages. You have to do this as a unified group. And people are starting to understand that better than ever.
The more that message gets pushed out there, this idea of a regionalism and regional economic development, the more accepting it is.
Well, some attitudes die hard. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, there are some challenges that the region is facing, that the county is facing, that we need to deal with. And we'll talk a little bit about that with our panel when we return on Business Casual.
Welcome back to Pop That Culture.
Bury the phone in the pet cemetery. It's got a cord.
Welcome back to the Craig Fahle Show.
Our votes don't matter.
And I always disagree.
Doing this show, I feel like I get like a little bit of time to chit chat with the man.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with.
Oh.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the Greg Russell Movie Show. Writer, producer, director. How did this whole thing come about for you?
Yo, what's up? This is your boy Walter Jones, also known as Zach, the original Black Ranger, and you are geeking out with Geektainment Weekly at New Radio Media. It's market time.
I'll tell you what happened.
Today, Morty, I got the Szechuan sauce. We're at C2E2 with the legendary Chris Claremont.
Greetings, my fellow geeks. My name is Jordan Trevelyan, and this is Get It to the Geeks. We're here with David Yost, the original blue Power Ranger.
Nobody promised you when you bought the thing on PS4 that you could play it on Switch.
But your excuse is garbage.
I'm gonna pull out my crossbow.
All right, sweet chainmail armor. Let's see what you got.
Welcome back to Who's Got Chutzpah. I'm your host, Rabbi Tzvi Jacobson. Andy, are you ready? Andy, what holiday is this associated with?
Oh boy. Sukkot?
I'm sorry, that's not the answer we were looking for. Whitney, for the win. Can you tell us which holiday is this?
I know. Shavuot.
No, I'm sorry. I've got the answer. Ta-da!
What?
My show, Let's Talk Torah, where we talk Torah, holidays, faith, and all the things that help us live our life. That's Let's Talk Torah, Thursdays at 3 p.m. on newradiomedia.com.
That's pretty good.
Welcome back to Business Casual, a partnership between the Detroit Regional Chamber and New Radio Media. I'm Craig Fahle, your host, and we're in the midst of our panel discussion. My guest, Justin Robinson of the Detroit Regional Chamber. Thank you for being here. You're in charge, of course, of business attraction for the Chamber. We have Khalil Rahal, who, of course, is the Assistant Wayne County Executive, and Rob Luce, Executive Director of the Detroit Region Aerotropolis. Gentlemen, we do have some challenges here, and you mentioned Amazon before the break, and I think it's important to talk about this. They mentioned the talent gap. I was just talking, yesterday was last week was National Apprenticeship Week. We have community colleges working with other people to get some job training programs going, but we are still behind the 8 ball on this issue. And people are going to locate here. They want to know that the talent that they need is available. Khalil, I'm going to ask you this one first, because a lot of this is going to fall on you to coordinate these sorts of things from a county perspective. What's got to change? Is it just getting the people to understand that there are opportunities? How do we motivate people to actually take advantage of what's out there? Because there are jobs out there.
There are a lot of jobs out there, and I think there's a couple of things. It's going to take a lot of planning and a lot of coordinating between both business and the civic leaders and everybody that's got a stake in this. I think you saw a great sign of that just 2 days ago. I don't know if everybody remembers, but at Cobo Hall we had this great event called Ready, Set, Build that was put on by Bedrock, Barton Mallow, Turner Construction, the county, the city. We were all there, and 11 trades were there. And that's because we have great projects happening right now. We got Hudson's, we got Monroe Block, we've got a criminal justice center that we got to build. And what people don't know is when they go to these
I think they're more excited
shows,
about the other one coming down than the new one going up, but that's another story.
And that's probably true, but what's really exciting is when you get a chance to work on these kinds of buildings, right? You get to put on your resume that you worked on Hudson's or Monroe Block. And these are some of the most technologically advanced buildings that people are getting a chance to work on, making everybody else wanting to have that kind of talent, to have that skill set work for them. So 2 things to be on the lookout for. Obviously, there's a lot of jobs, there's a huge need we need right now. 4 or 5 years from now, we're gonna have to figure out what we do about automation, because the skills are gonna change. And we're gonna have to have this sort of continuing education to make sure that happens. So obviously we've gotta attract a lot of people now. We've gotta take people who don't have the skill set to train them up. We've got to pay those people as they're being trained to motivate them to stay in all of it, and then we've got to plan for the future.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, though, to recognize, right, as a baseline, look, we sell our talent base to companies. That's the number one thing we talk about. We're a region of 2.5 million people in the workforce. We have the highest per capita density of engineers any place in the United States. We have a huge pipeline coming out of our Michigan universities, over 6,000 per year, 25,000 software programmers, and about 3,600 graduating a year, over 500,000 people employed in manufacturing in Southeast Michigan. So there is a strong talent base that's here that is much larger. I think we're actually larger than 26 other states, the regional talent base. So there is a lot here already. There is improvements that need to be made, but companies are choosing to come here every day for that highly skilled, highly capable talent pool, and we can't lose sight of that. I think one of the key things the Chamber is working on is the retention of our brightest and best, right? The highly educated, highly mobile talent coming out of our universities. Right now, we are retaining about 65% of that talent after a year. So we're losing about 22,000 educated students every year to other locations. We're not the only region. That's the kind of the norm across really the United States. There's only 10 cities that are adding population. But if we can every year figure out how to retain at least 1% more of that, of those students, right, that's thousands of jobs to our market, right? So that's really, we got to look at strategically, right, from the ground up from K through 12, but also the universities. How do we keep this talent here and how do we get them the jobs they need for the future?
And I think having a vibrant Detroit is part of that.
Huge part.
The interesting thing is, though, there doesn't seem to be a ton of agreement on exactly what that education program should look like to make sure that we are ready for the future. This is political arguments that happen all the time about what's the proper role of business when it comes to determining the curriculum, when it comes to determining what kids are learning, what skill sets we want to push. What do you see changing sort of that gridlock that we have there? Because we can't even agree on what type of math to teach kids, let alone whether they should take math for all 4 years. And so, Khalil, I mean, you get to fight these fights all the time.
No, listen, it's about leadership, you know? I mean, that's one of the privileges I have is working for, a boss that makes you come in every day and ask you what the hard questions really are, you know, and he's not afraid to go to the mattresses when he has to. There are best practices out there. There are other states, there are other places in the country, there are other places in the world doing this at a really, really good rate. And there's nothing wrong with taking a page out of somebody else's playbook and just trying to figure all this out and putting it in front of folks and just asking them the really hard and tough questions. And so how much political will there is to accomplish all that, that's a different question. And that's not something that any one leader can accomplish on their own, as we've experienced. But I do think, leadership is going to be the key to that.
But if you take a look at leadership here, and this sort of leads me to this here, we've got this new CEOs group that is yet to be named, that was just announced not too long ago. The county's on board, the city, Oakland County's thinking about whether or not they want to join. But you've got a bunch of CEOs from the region. It almost seems as if that leadership question, it's being redefined right now.
Right.
Is there a balance that we need to maintain when it comes to elected leadership, business leadership, to make sure that it works properly? Is there a danger of running the risk of having one side have more control over that than the other? It's a weird question.
I think you're hearing a theme here, whether it's talent attraction or business attraction. It takes a village. It's a collaborative approach between the private sector and government. And to Khalil's point, it takes leadership, true leadership. All difficult issues at the end of the day are solved by true leaders. And I think you're seeing a change in leadership, or certainly a change in the mindset of those leaders that will help this region advance some of these issues that have been, quite frankly, issues for years.
Is that just a generational thing? Like, we've been doing it the same way for so long that we might as well try something new? I mean, because, we have been banging our head against the wall for a long time in this area.
I think it goes back to the county executive's comment. Do you want to be somebody, or do you want to get something done? And having that perspective on how to approach, again, talent attraction or business attraction makes all the difference.
And I think perspective is the right word, right? For too long, I think we've just looked within, right? Kind of what is one community doing inside that somebody else would be doing. We have to look outside, right? This is a global competition. Yeah. We need to look to the best in practices, not only in the United States, but across the globe, and bring those learnings back here. And I think one of the things that actually came out of the bankruptcy process and this new CEO group, there's a partnership between business, government, and philanthropic organizations really coming together to solve these issues. That's what we need, and I think we found really a good cadence of how to do that moving forward. And I think it's just how do we speed up our lessons learned.
And I think you just basically summed up what this program is going to be exploring for the next several, who knows how long this will be going on, but that's exactly why this show is needed, so people understand those intersections and how this is all coming together. All right, we've got about a minute left here. I want to give you each an opportunity to talk about one thing that we should be excited about and one thing that keeps you up at night. Khalil goes first.
I think the one thing you got to be excited about is the amount of opportunity that exists. We are hearing a lot of things happening. Obviously, you hear all the things that are happening downtown and downriver. You're hearing about McLeod Steel. Dearborn, the Ford campus is still going on for the next 8 years of construction, and then all the things happening in Aerotropolis. But what people don't know is that with all these things happening all throughout Wayne County, there's still so much opportunity that could take place. One thing to be concerned about, obviously, is when it comes to the things that we have to do, the way we have to progress, the way we have to move our region forward. Different philosophies out there. Obviously, you asked a lot about incentives, and I think we've got to be very cautious about all these things. I think it's always taken on a case-by-case basis. There's no doubt that certain projects are going to be so challenging that you need to be competitive. And then there's always a question for every dollar that you take away from from the atmosphere that you need to create for the kind of talent that you need, is another sort of backstep into try to creating that region that you want.
All right, literally not much time. Something you're excited about, something that's keeping you up.
The future is bright in the Aerotropolis, 6,000 acres of development-ready land in a market that is historically low from a vacancy standpoint. Keeps me up at night is the pending recession. Most economists say 18 months to 2 years. A lot of the projects that we work on take that long to get across the finish line, which means the projects that we're talking to right now will be crossing the finish line right before the recession. So make hay while the sun's shining.
All right, Justin.
I'm all over the world and in some of the best cities and regions. And right now, Detroit is on the tongues of a lot of these people in a positive way. And I think that's for the first time in probably many years. I think keeping me up at the night is we got a lot of barriers, right, to address in order to winning more deals. And we got to come together to do that. And I think we've just started only proving we have the ability to do that.
All right, Justin, Khalil, Rob, thank you very much for being with me. The really great panel that I appreciate you guys being here very much. There's a lot to talk about here, and we will be mining a lot of these. Our next show, one of our next shows is actually going to be on incentives, only on incentives for the whole hour. So we're looking forward to that. All right, thank you for watching Business Casual. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next week.